For both of my companies, the biggest underlying challenge always is to find the right people into the right positions, into the right places, especially on the lead, on the management level. There's a few things that I look at when looking at a new partner, and that is mostly, are we compatible in terms of our go-to-market, in terms of our target recipe, our target audience. There were different stages of the companies, different aspects and different key elements that allowed us to grow.
We arrived at season 4 of the Grow Your B2B SaaS podcast. We're going to start in style, live from Morocco. In season 4, we're going to focus a lot more on founder to founder learning. So diving into the founder journey, challenges, mistakes, things went well, of course, so you can avoid these mistakes or kind of copy the things they did well. We're going to kick off with Michael Kamleitner. He's the two-time founder, and he's, as he says it himself, he lives and breathes SaaS. He founded SWAT.io in 2013, where he's now out of the day-to-day being a board member, and he founded WALS after in 2014, where he's now running day-to-day as the founder and CEO. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hi, Joran. Thanks for having me.
Nice. We're gonna dive into it right away. Bit of a different setup in season 4, so I'm gonna just fire off 10 questions to get to know you and to get to know the company. Was SWAT your first startup?
Technically, no.
Okay.
Short enough? Or?
Yeah, we're going to dive into that later.
Yeah.
Have you always wanted to be an entrepreneur?
No.
Interesting. Do you have an end goal defined for both companies you have right now?
Yes, that's a yes.
Okay, I will come back to that. And you run 2 companies, or one day-to-day, one as a board member. What keeps you motivated?
The daily challenges that are like, not any day is the same like the day before. Like it's always something new, always new challenges, always something new to learn, always a potential to grow myself and my team. Nice.
And a personal question, what is your age?
46. I got 46 like a month ago, something like that.
Nice. And I guess 5 questions regarding the company. Normally I would ask, what is your current ARR? But I guess in your case, it's a double-sided question.
Yes. I do currently not disclose each company's ARR, but I'm proud and happy to report that both companies combined did cross the 10 million ARR threshold quite recently.
Nice, congrats. And I guess then in total, how many employees?
In total, that's about 65 now.
65.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And for either of them, have you taken any outside funding?
No, both companies have been bootstrapped. Actually, they have been bootstrapped out of my first company, and that answers your first question about whether SWAT.io was the first company. No, actually, my first company was an agency business. Yep. Out of that agency business, me and my teams, we spun out and bootstrapped the 2 companies, the 2 product SaaS companies, yes. Nice.
And would you do it similar again if you're going to start the 3rd venture or the 4th venture?
You mean, would I do the bootstrapping again versus the funding way? Oh, you're going pretty much in the deep water now, right? That is a difficult question to answer. When I did found the first companies, I didn't make a conscious decision regarding bootstrapping or funding or taking on funding. I was in a quite naive position. I didn't even believe that SWAT.io would become its own company at one time. I just thought it's maybe a sort of side project that I can sell to 5 or 10 customers, and then it grew a little bit, and then it grew a little bit more, and then it was already a profit-generating business, and then the question basically already was answered for me. Would I do it again that way? I think that's a very personal decision for each founder, which way to fund and build a company fits you more, fits you better.
Makes sense. So you mentioned it already, you started from an agency. How did you came up with this, I guess, the ideas for both startups?
So no big founding myth here or anything, to be honest. It's actually quite boring. But for both companies, the ideas for the product actually came directly from customer side, from the agency customers that we were having. So we were building custom social media software, marketing software for our customers. And just from watching them, how they were managing their social media channels, their customers' channels, and so on, we generated the first idea for SWAT.io. So really just by looking at what our existing customers, what kind of pain they had in their daily lives.
Yeah, I think you hear it a lot, right? If you start from an agency, you already have clients, you're already fixing problems.
Yeah, that's a very natural way to come up with a business or a product idea, I think. So even if you don't have this big eureka moment where you come up with a crazy new idea, it wasn't necessary in my case. But just like from learning the industry, that's also a very positive aspect of doing an agency. That just forced to learn everything about your specific industry, and that makes it then much easier to come up with something that actually someone will pay for.
Yeah, Has that been like pivotal in or crucial in for you to achieve product market fit, to already have clients, already had that agency?
I would spin it around. I would say that reaching product market fit very quickly was, of course, a necessity because someone had to pay for this thing as soon as possible. Because we, at this point, always had the question, or I personally always had the question, should I continue the agency business? Should I go all in with SWOT.io? And in that regard, I guess I was risk averse in my decision. And actually, it took me quite a long time to make that leap and say, okay, now I'm stopping the agency work, I'm phasing it out slowly, I'm moving all my engineers to the product. And I only did that when I had a feeling that we had achieved this early product market fit.
So at one point you completely shut down the agency to fully focus on...
Yes. But again, I think other people, other founders would have maybe been bolder and quicker with that decision. It took me like more than a year, almost 2 years to really mentally get the idea, hey, SWOT.io can be its own self-sufficient company. And so it took me 1 or 2 years. And then, after 1 year, I started simply to take on new customers with the agency, try to find the replacements or hand over the existing ones. And then after about 2 years, it was over, yeah.
And was that maybe, was that your first SaaS where you went from a service model to software?
Yeah. Yes, it was, but I didn't know the term SaaS back then.
Yeah.
That was around 2013. Of course, SaaS was a thing back then, but I didn't know about it at all. Yeah. So before that, it was only custom software development, and then SWOT.io was the first productized SaaS model product.
Yeah, I can imagine it's scary because you have, I guess, big contracts, right, with the service business, with the custom development, and then you go towards SaaS.
Yeah, it's a leap of faith, and of course there would have been, or theoretically there is alternatives. I could have tried to keep the agency business, but then I would have needed to find someone who operates the agency, because I don't think it's a good idea to, as a CEO, to do the two things at the same time. You need to focus. That was also one of the biggest learnings in the first year of doing SWOT.io. We didn't have dedicated engineering resources, so that meant so there was 2 guys working on SWOT.io, let's say, and anytime an agency customer was coming with a new project and we saw the dollar bills, we had to move the engineers from SWOT.io to the agency project, which of course meant that SWOT.io didn't progress at all. Only when we made the choice to say, okay, now we really have like dedicated engineering team, only then we got some momentum into the product development.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I have a friend who has an agency and he really wants to build his own SaaS, but he has the same model or same problem where you go for the money and not the long term.
And understandably, and sometimes you just need to go for the money, right? But that is difficult, and I am grateful and happy that we could make the transition and survived it as well. I've seen other people fail with that, with very similar. It's a very common thing, of course, that you generate a product idea out of an agency, but very often, unfortunately, it goes wrong.
Yeah, and I guess after you chose to go all in, what has been your, besides I guess your clients from the agency, what has been your go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, so for SWOT.io, again, I didn't think about go-to-market strategy. I was like super naive, didn't really consult anyone, unfortunately. Naturally, we gravitated towards a more sales-driven model. So it was basically me, of course, in the beginning, doing founder sales, reaching out to existing agency customers, asking them for referrals, and like that. And this way we found our first, 10 or 20 customers, yeah. Until I, of course, realized I'm not founder sales is one thing, but you need someone else doing it. And then I actually hired my first salesperson relatively early.
And I guess after those 10 clients, you hired your first salesperson. What has been your strategy afterwards? Has it been fully sales-led or?
Yeah. So we were sales-led for many years, and we were growing the company sales-led to, I would say, 5+ million ARR, something like that. And only then we introduced a product-led notion as well, and opened up a self-service side to the business. That was just I think 2 years ago. Something like that. Of course, it's still the majority of the business is still sales-driven, but of course we see the product-led side of the business growing, which is good because it will hopefully allow us to enter new markets and also be active in customer segments where we haven't been before. So now we see that as a complementary thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of companies are struggling with this, what you currently have been doing, going from sales-led to product-led.
Yeah, so that's definitely not easy. I think it's in both directions, it's not easy. Interestingly, and maybe we talk about that later, for WALS, or the second company, I chose the other way around and started with being a product-led business, and then only later added a sales team to that company. So I've seen it 2 times from 2 different directions. I think neither one is easy, to be honest, but both can work.
Both can work. You did them both then, right? So I guess if you could do it again,
Yeah.
what would be then your strategy?
That depends a lot on the type of product you're selling and the type of customers you are selling to. I think in general, the general agreement, I think in software and business software specifically, is that the product-led is a big part of the future, and that how people are buying software, how they are buying business software has changed in the last, 5 or 10 years. And so the product-led aspect will probably be the more dominant in most industries, in most businesses.
And if we look at both companies or individual, like what is one thing or what is the best thing you've been doing to grow them to where they are today?
If there was a silver bullet and this one thing that helped me grow both companies, I would not tell you. No, I would charge consultancy fees to tell other people. I don't have the silver bullet. There were different stages of the companies, different aspects and different key elements that allowed us to grow. I would like to focus on the second business, on WALS now. As I said, started to be product-led, and there was a lot of organic growth, which was driven by great content marketing and great SEO. So that was in the beginning, in the early years of the company, it was basically the only reason we were growing. We were really early in the market with our product idea. We didn't have a sales team at all, but we had quite good content. We did good SEO, and suddenly we were seeing our customer base being, 50% from the States, where we haven't done anything other than publishing content really. Yeah? So in this stage of the company, that was the key driver. Later on, we started a partner program, for example, and that is currently one of the biggest drivers of our growth. Being integrated and having partnerships with a lot of relevant players in our industry helped us grow. Even since the pandemic, we're doing this, and it was like a key element for us to keep growing during those years.
Nice. And how do you pick those partnerships? Because I know a lot of companies are struggling with that as well.
We did too. We made a lot of mistakes. There's a few things that I look at when looking at the new partner, and that is mostly, are we compatible in terms of our go-to-market, in terms of our target SCP, our target audience? If we are partnering with a company who is selling enterprise tickets for 200,000 euros, and we want to be that 50 euro add-on, there's a big gap here, and that probably doesn't work. Or the other way around. So that's price is also a thing. In many partnerships, it's important to position yourself correctly so that you are perceived as an add-on, for example. If my solution is 10 times more expensive than the partner platform solution, that's very often not going to work. Yeah. If the partner is having a freemium model, it might be good that we also have a freemium model, things like that.
Yeah, and is it purely 10 partners, or do you also have affiliates, resellers?
Yeah, there's different shades here, different shades of gray. So it usually starts with the product integration. That is very important to us. So that means that our software, WALS is a social media widget basically, so we can integrate into CMS platforms, into digital signage platforms, so a lot of platforms that can consume our widget. So the first step really is to get our widget into their product, into their marketplace if they have one, and make the technical integration work. And then on top of that, we can then do the second step is like co-marketing, joining our marketing forces, doing customer showcases, press releases, interviews, whatever we can come up with. And then, of course, the sales integration, and that can go both ways. We do have with large enterprise partners, we do have reselling agreements, which work very, very well. But we are also doing like referral agreements with smaller ones where they're just handing us over customers for a commission.
Yeah, nice.
We don't have technically an affiliate program yet, who knows? Mostly because we are concentrating on a smaller number of partners where we can reach really high volumes.
You said a crucial thing, like they need to have access to your ICP, and that's going to be the most important.
Yeah, there needs to be a good overlap here.
Exactly. If we talk about WALS, what has been the biggest company challenge you had so far?
The biggest keys to growth, the same answer with challenges. There's just so many that it's hard to pick a single one out. The challenges also like morph every year, right? And actually that's true for both of my companies. The biggest underlying challenge always is to find the right people into the right positions, into the right places, especially on the lead, on the management level. I think that is something that nobody teaches you at university, how to find the right people and how to effectively manage them. So I think this is like an underlying challenge that I'm still struggling struggling with honestly and still need to improve on day to day. So that is like something that will probably never end. I think in specific challenges we do in both companies, but especially now with WALS, I can see a lot of challenges coming from our competitor sides. Differentiation is a big issue, and I think that's true for many SaaS products. B2B SaaS products, that the software we are building for the customer, for the purchaser, is very hard to differentiate. You look on feature lists, you look on the pricing page, and it's really hard. Everything looks the same. And unless you really test a lot of products in parallel, it's very hard to see which actually is the better solution, which means, yes, price sensitivity plays a role, especially in economically more challenging times, I guess we are seeing in the last few years. Competition versus differentiation versus pricing. So this is a challenge that we see quite a lot of in the recent years.
Yeah, because it's a lot easier to start a SaaS nowadays, and then you have all these templates.
That's true. Of course, the cost to start a software product have decreased, so there is also more competition. That's true. Also, with both my companies and social media marketing software in general, of course, when we started more than 10 years ago, this was a nascent new place, something where you could really like innovate and be on the forefront. Of course, fast forward 10 years now, the software category is super established, I would say almost saturated in many aspects, so that is going to be more harder. And of course, at this point, there is of course a little bit of a disadvantage for the bootstrap company, which naturally follows a rather organic, steady, but growth trajectory like this. But definitely not like this.
No.
Of course, if you're competing with companies at this point who are much bigger than you, or maybe have a lot of more funding than you, of course they have other possibilities to counter that challenge. Like they can go into other verticals, they can extend the product to be a suite of several products, stuff like that. Things like these are very hard to do if you are on the bootstrap trajectory.
Yeah, you just have less money to experiment, and you will go a bit slower probably.
Yeah, or I don't know, maybe you would like to acquire another company to drive your growth. It makes sense. Probably not as easy to do if you are a bootstrapper. On the other hand, of course, maybe never say never. You can be a bootstrapper for a long time and then think about funding. If you have a smart idea, for example, to acquire a company, maybe you find funding for that.
Are you struggling to find a cost-effective and scalable marketing channel? Check out Redditis. We help you to have other people recommend your SaaS, and you would only pay them when they deliver you paid clients, making it a very cost-effective and scalable marketing channel. Want to learn more? Go to getredditis.com. I have one follow-up question on the first thing you mentioned, like finding the right people. And you mentioned you still struggle with that. I guess if you can give a piece of advice to other founders, do you now still go for your gut feeling? Do you have some kind of process you go through to find the right people? Even though you still struggle with it, right? You probably have something.
Yeah, so in the end, the gut feeling is the final judgment for me still. If at all, my mistake was more often to not trust my gut feeling. That was more my mistake. That has been more regularly my issue. I don't have a big process here, but I have a sounding board of people who I bring into these decisions and let them also have discussions with a candidate. And I'm talking about the top level management positions that I have to fill. Of course, not for everyone, but for those, it really makes sense to spend a lot of time and share this decision with other people.
And I think it's nice that you have indeed that board of advisor, or at least like the people you can chat with.
Exactly, and that's just really a very small group of people who I learned to trust over the years, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, and we're gonna really dive into the founder journey, right? I think everybody hits rock bottom in any way, financially, personally. Do you have a moment which you can share? You hit rock bottom, and how did you survive that moment?
Yes, I can share one moment, a relatively recent moment that was in 2023, actually. It must have been like February or something like that. Look, both of our companies, we are social media products. That means we are heavily dependent on social media platforms and getting data out of those social media platforms. So we are consuming through the official APIs content from Facebook, Instagram, X, and so on. So we are, of course, dependent on that. Our business model wouldn't work without that data. And for the most part, this data is openly available through APIs. You have to go through approval processes, everything, that's fine. But it's usually even free of cost. And of course, the dependency is something you are aware of if you're building a product on top of those platforms. But after 10 years, you tend to forget to think about it. And then in February last year, suddenly, it was still called Twitter back then, Elon Musk introduced the API cost structure that was like almost killing us. And so they were announcing, hey, guys, we are going to be closing our open API and we are going to start charging. We don't tell you how much we charge, so you have to wait for that, in typical Elon Musk styles. And then it took a few weeks of waiting for the price tag, and then actually the price tag was $42,000, but a month.
Yeah.
So that means $500,000 just for API cost on Twitter or now X. So that was a moment where I did definitely hit rock bottom, because it's of course, with a relatively small company like WALS, we are very hard to find a way to swallow that cost, that unplanned cost.
Yeah, because something which was normally free, I guess, was a given, suddenly became like $500,000 per year.
You can't prepare for such things, right? Don't get me wrong. In general, I think it makes sense to pay for data. It's not like I'm completely against that. Actually, I would prefer to have like solid contracts with all social media platforms and pay them reasonable. But $500K a year, I don't see as very reasonable. Luckily, that thing hit us when we were already like a healthy, profitable company. So part of that cost we could simply swallow, but of course it ate into our profits. What we did after a few weeks of being like shell-shocked, we started to restructure our pricing model. And on the other hand, we did heavily invest into engineering and optimization of how we consume content through the Twitter API. The second part, of course, to be honest, we could have done earlier and should have done earlier, because everything that's free, you tend to be a little bit too wasteful, and we have been. So there was a lot of potential on the engineering side to bring down our consumption. And like I said, on the commercial side, on the business side, we restructured our pricing model, which we have planned for way too long anyway. And at that point, we were suddenly forced to do something about it. So that's what we did, and that helped us to at least partially balance out that additional cost with additional revenue.
Nice.
But I would be lying. It's still a net negative in 2023, like the whole API cost. So that's still work in progress.
Yeah, because in the end, like, you have to make up for the cost, and you can't indeed, as you mentioned, charge everything to your clients. Like, that's not...
Yeah, then we are going back to the previous challenge I mentioned, competition, right? Yeah. From an outside perspective, I would have loved to, write a white paper about this thing, because of course you could have thought, what if all the players on the market, all the social media tools out there collectively would have decided to not buy into this enterprise API subscription, and instead just said, okay, let's just not have Twitter content. Theoretically, that would have been an interesting move, but of course it doesn't work like that. There will be always one competitor who pays the $500K, right? And at this point, the competitor suddenly has like a huge advantage over you. Yeah. So it's interesting that you have almost no choice than to buy in. And in fact, a few months later, when we looked into the market and we were watching our competitors even more closely than normally, we did find out that most of them did buy in. In the end, that was the right decision.
Yeah, because I can imagine, I guess, if clients rely on Twitter, they're going to churn if you don't offer it, so you had to probably...
Exactly, and that there's regional differences, of course. So in the last 12 months, the relevancy of X or Twitter in Europe seems to have decreased. It's really hard to say, but when looking into our data, yes, there seems to be a small decrease, but in the US that's not the case. In the US it's as important, as relevant as before. And so exactly, we also as a social media aggregator, so we promise to collect and aggregate social media data for your brand, your company, your hashtag, whatever. So we can't just leave out X content from that. So we really didn't have a choice. So the customer would immediately go to a competitor if we would drop Twitter support. It was a frustrating situation. Yeah, you don't feel good.
I can imagine. You kind of mentioned it once already. If you could go back, you probably did have done things differently with the free data, like not consume as much. If you could go back in time, are there any other things you would do differently, looking now back in hindsight, with building the companies in general?
I have to say, you need to be humble, and for me it worked out twice. Like bootstrapping two profitable and still growing companies is not something you have to take for granted. So actually it would be almost foolish to say I would do everything completely differently. Coming back to what I mentioned before, I think I quote unquote wasted quite a lot of time in the early years of both products, of both companies, because of being, let's say, insecure or not committed enough to go all in. I could have definitely moved the products, the businesses faster if I would have been able to make the mental switch. And now I am a SaaS company quicker and earlier. It is what it is, right?
Yep.
I think everything or many things happen for their reason. And I think that the path has proven that it's working for me. But that is maybe something I would tell my younger self, be more bold and go all in earlier, because really there's not so much to lose. The agency business that I had was not huge or anything, right? It was like a tiny boutique software agency. It's not like I was making millions and I was risking too much.
You're now growing the second company, right? Are you using any kind of processes, strategies to grow the second company, which you learned, for example, for the first one?
With WALS, the biggest part of our growth right now actually is the sales side of the business. So while in the early years, and we were product driven and very much marketing inbound driven, but nowadays we see the most part of our growth comes from the enterprise sales team. So the strategy for our growth is to enforce that and to double down on that. That felt a little bit unintuitive for me at first, right? Because you grow and grow for many years and you don't have many salespeople at all, or just one maybe, I don't know. And then suddenly you have to think about, oh, maybe we are plateauing maybe, and we need to do some other stuff. And like the partner integrations were one part of our growth in the last few years, true, that helped us overcome the plateau. But there's still more to do. And I think doubling down on our sales notion is the second part of our growth strategy. And suddenly you think about outbound. I never did outbound at all, like in both companies. In Swordeo they are doing now, but during the time I was running it, never did outbound. And so that's, again, something new we have to explore. And that's also what makes it so much fun, right? That you have something new to try and master every year. It's changing.
Yeah, because there was a question I wanted to ask, because you said sales, right? But sales can mean many things, I guess, selling to enterprise, but you're now proactively going outbound.
Yes. Yeah, since 1+ years, something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when you started doing that, like how long did it actually take you to become successful? Because they always say it takes a certain wrap-up time, right?
Work in progress, I would say. That's also an interesting question. We decided to first work with external help, with an agency, an outbound company. I guess there's different ways to see that. Some people would say, okay, that's just wasting time, because in the end you need to have these functions inside the company, and I would agree. But for us, it was a good way to just explore and learn from them. So we had this 1-year contract with this agency, not cheap, to be honest. It was quite an investment. But during this year, we tried to copy or learn and adapt as much of their processes as we could. And I think that helped us to then set up the same process in-house. Yeah.
And it seems like you're like getting in the help you needed with hiring people, with setting up sales. Is that your process, where if you don't know something, you will get in the proper help?
Yeah.
Try to see if you can get the knowledge from them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the idea. Exactly. Yeah. If you have never done it before, of course you could also try to hire, I don't know, a new VP of sales or someone who has done it before. That's of course also viable, but maybe harder to afford. And especially when you're bootstrapping, a big hire is sometimes just not something you can afford. Yeah.
Nice. Let's dive into the final 3 questions. Mm-hmm. This is going to be per stage, and this could be really general, but what kind of advice would you give somebody who's just starting out as a SaaS founder and growing to 10K monthly recurring revenue?
I would say be as close to your potential or existing customers as possible. You learn so much from them. At 10K, you didn't achieve product market fit yet. Being close to your customers, learn how they use your product, what their real pain is, and how you can improve your product to ease that pain. I think that's the single most important thing at this stage.
And that's what you did, like really founder-led sales have?
Yes, I would say so, yeah. Especially with the first company with Swordeo, that was absolutely key, yeah.
Yeah. When we go past the 10K MRR, and this is going to be a big step towards like 10 million ARR, what kind of advice would you give here?
I think that's really quite a stretch from 10K to 10 million. Like I said before, both of my companies are not there yet, so we are on this journey still. It's only combined that we can claim we have crossed that threshold. I think especially if you're, let's put it like that, if you reach the million ARR, at that you can fake it easily until that point. And by fake it, maybe you don't have a good process, maybe you have not enough people on your team, or the wrong people on your team, or not experienced enough people. So to 1 million, I guess you can fake it. If you have a proper product, I think you will get to that. But after that, I think you really can't neglect the things anymore that I mentioned. Good processes and having like really good management team. That is the most important thing if you want to have a chance to get towards 10 million. Have a good management structure and find the right people into the right seats.
And as you mentioned, make sure you hire the right people by trusting your gut feeling and also getting other people to...
Exactly. Because of course, like I said, as a CEO, founder CEO, you will do so much yourself. You can make up for a lot of things that you don't have in the team for a while, but at one point you just don't scale that much anymore, and then you need those people.
Because I think a lot of founders struggle with that. Is that a hard moment where you have to decide, okay, I'm not going to do this myself anymore. I'm going to find people who can do it for me?
Yeah, it depends on the personality, but I guess for many of us it is hard to give responsibility away and to also accept you will never find someone who does the task or the function 100% like you. They will always do it differently. Maybe if you're really that good, if you're certain of yourself, you might say, okay, they can maybe only do 80-90% of my quality, and then the challenge is to learn to accept that it's okay even. And of course, there will also be people who do certain things much better than you. On average, you should be fine with that.
Exactly. You can't be good in everything, even though you did everything before. Really general final question. What kind of advice would you give other SaaS founders who are now on their journey anywhere in the revenue phase?
Something that I also neglected for too long, or what I did for many years in the beginning, is to not have a good support network for all these types of questions. Only around the middle of my journey, I got more involved in the local SaaS community, which is quite, well, it's not huge in Vienna, but still there is a meetup there, which I then started to attend. And of course also things like the SaaS Talk community, the SaaS Talk founder membership, which we are part of and which brought us here basically. This helps so much to have a group of like-minded people who probably have faced all the challenges or are facing the same challenges, because it's not so special that most of us go through the same things, and having the right people at the right time where you can ask and bounce ideas off and do some support sessions, that is really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's, for me, it's crucial as well. Like I use the podcast to do, right?
Yeah.
To ask the questions, but everybody wants to start a podcast.
Yeah.
Getting a community like this, where we're right now, or a community in your own neighborhood, local environment.
Yeah. That's also something. Being a guest on podcast can also help tremendously to create a good network of people who you can share stuff with.
Yeah, nice. If people want to get in contact with you, what would be the best way to do so?
Of course, you can find me on LinkedIn. Michael Kamleitner is my name. You can also email me, michael@wals.io.
Nice. We're going to link back to your LinkedIn profile, because it is going to be in German Austrian name.
Yes.
So it might be a bit difficult for people to announce. We're going to also link back to SWOT and WALS. And if you're listening to on Spotify, make sure to follow, subscribe, and leave us a review here. Thanks for coming on, Michael.
Thanks, Joran. It was fun.
Likewise. And now we're going to enjoy the sun.
Yes, we will.
Cheers.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this show of the Grow Your B2B SaaS podcast. You made it till the end, so I think we can assume you liked this content. If you did, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you like this content, feel free to reach out if you want to sponsor the show. If you have a specific guest in mind, if you have a specific topic you want us to cover, reach out to me on LinkedIn. More than happy to take a look at it. If you want to know more about Reditus, feel free to reach out as well. But for now, have a great day and good luck growing your B2B SaaS.